Updated Chrome. Happening now, we'd like to welcome our viewers from across North America, from right here in Manhattan, Kansas, live in the studio, and from around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room, episode 264 for July the 6th, 2022. I am Wes Fryer, coming to you from my parents' house in Manhattan, Kansas, where I've come up for a couple days. And I am a new computer teacher and media literacy teacher, I should say robotics teacher, but computer science and media literacy teacher at Providence Day School in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we did not find a house to buy last week, but we did find an apartment to be in, and our housing quest continues. But joining me as always is Dr. Jason Neiffer, who is apparently circulating around the major metropolitan areas of the state of Montana. And tonight, Dr. Neiffer, where have you graced the local residents with your presence?
Well, I'm joining tonight from lovely Havre, Montana, in north central Montana, along U.S. Highway 2 in the north, the High Line of Montana, if you will. Amtrak goes through here, and the infamous Empire Builder train stops here in beautiful Havre, Montana. But I'm on some site visits. I'll be spending some time tomorrow on the Rocky Boy Reservation in north central Montana for some exciting ongoing projects at Montana Digital Academy. I'm excited that even though I don't have my delightful home internet connection, which is super fast, I think I'm on a wireless connection tonight via Verizon. It looks like we're in pretty good shape. So it's a shame, Dr. Fryer, because I actually, up until just a couple of hours ago, I was at my parents' house in Great Falls, Montana, and in fact joined a lot of conference calls in the last couple of days, literally from my parents' basement. So it's a shame that I could not join you tonight, so we could both be joining you from our parents' homes.
That's right. That's cool. Well, there's a sign of summertime. Well, Dr. Neiffer, for the benefit of the many new viewers, well, hello to Peggy George, by the way, in Phoenix. We're sorry we were just a few minutes late getting started. But for those folks who might be new to the show, in addition to some early banter about Montana or central Oklahoma or Kansas news and politics or weather, what else can folks look forward to tonight?
Well, the EdTech Situation Room is a podcast, which I'm sure you figured out, that goes through the headlines from the techosphere and try to shoot them through an educational prism in hopes of maybe bringing some insight or thoughts or new ideas to teachers, administrators, tech directors, and all those that help serve our students in schools. It's been a relatively slow news week, although Dr. Fryer and I did come up with a series of links that I think will delight you. If you're interested in seeing the links, especially the ones we don't get to, as we oftentimes run out of time each week, feel free to go to our website, edtechsr.com/links. You can access the Google document, the second volume of our Google document, where we share all the links going back to episode 1 of our podcast a number of years back. This week, we have several topics to talk about, including some connectivity news, Google and Apple news, some podcasting information, security, our tech correction topic, which we others sometimes call rabbit hole, video conferencing information, some cryptocurrency news, and a miscellaneous topic. And at the end of our podcast tonight, we'll be sure to share our Geeks of the Week. Dr. Fryer, where would you like to start tonight?
Oh, I just put an article in that I'll start with. This is about technology spending in light of the mass shootings that we have seen in the United States, and that unfortunately seem to be continuing to just be part of our life. So this is under the miscellaneous category, but the New York Times reported today. Well, actually, no, I went ahead and threw that in as a today, but this was a article that I found. This was from June 26th. So this is a June 26, 2022 article by Natasha Singer, and its headline: "Schools are spending billions on high-tech defense for mass shootings." Now, this might not be a topic that you would necessarily think we're going to cover. That's why I put it under the miscellaneous category. But oftentimes, and I am a recovering technology director, as folks involved in school technology, we're involved in surveillance, and we're involved in really anything that touches the network. Over the course of my time at Cassidy School, I inherited, but also saw the network continue to grow well over 100 security cameras. We were a campus of 80 acres and 23 buildings. But there's a whole lot of moving parts to that, and then how that can fit into an overall security strategy for the school, et cetera. So what the New York Times was reporting back in June was that the market for weapon detectors and crisis alert badges in schools is booming. There's questions about whether the new technology is effective. In fact, and I haven't done the research on this, but the article says there's really scant evidence that any of this kind of technology actually has done anything to, actually prevent school shootings. Now, I'll say that we had a system in place, and we followed the lead of Oklahoma City Public Schools. And thanks to my friend Eric Howman, I became aware of how effective this can be. Which was a system that actually scanned all the Gmail and Google Docs for messages about self-harm or about violence and weapons and things like that. I hope that is kind of a common thing for schools to do, because that is an important thing to monitor. But two different school systems, very large, that are featured in this article. One is Cobb County School District, that is north of Atlanta. Spent $5 million on a quote crisis management system. But what they detail is that back in, when was it? Well, it doesn't say the exact date, but basically it sent out a false alert, and it turned out to be a cyber attack. So someone actually hacked the school system, got it to go off, have a red alert, and then everybody in the school system thought they had a school shooting, incident happen, which caused a lot of trauma, and obviously caused some folks to be upset. That is a system called Alert Point that sent false alarms all over the place. I'll say that reminds me, as a school technology director, we went through different iterations of kind of the emergency broadcast, being able to push some buttons on a phone and then broadcast. Eventually, and I helped implement this new system with IP speakers and whatever, so that horns that were going to be on athletic fields and everything, to be able to send a recorded message, saying that these things, this wasn't a drill, this was real. I was up at school after midnight some nights, not testing that one that was going to wake the whole neighbors, but. Anyway, we also had to be careful, because when we had an older phone system, there had been a student as a prank that had gotten on this, and they were able to, broadcast to everybody's phone at some point. That was before things were happening with speakers. Anyway, in addition to that, the article also mentions a school district really of interest to me, because it's where I'm moving, Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's one of the largest U.S. school districts with over 140,000 students. They have an alert system from an Atlanta-based company called Centigix, and they spent over $1.1 million on that system with a badge service that was to allow teachers to quickly, send an alert if there was some kind of a system going on. At our school, we have used a system that was integrated with a tool called Informacast. And the app, and you can decide who has the ability to do this, will let you from your phone actually send a direct alert to say we have, a active shooter situation or something else. So anyway, the overall article, and I don't know how many listeners end up intersecting with surveillance systems and other kinds of security systems. There's a heck of a lot of money, that schools are spending on these kinds of things. And obviously public relations and the need to be perceived as doing things constructively to help. Talks about also, scanners, metal detectors, things like that. But these wouldn't necessarily be things you would think would fall into the realm of educational technology, but it's schools and it's technology. And I certainly know from my experience that, that was just part of the big umbrella that, in addition to all these other things that I was responsible for, it was all the security systems and the ways they interfaced. And by the way, also, getting them to be safe and secure. And that was something that we did end up doing, was set up multiple virtual LANs so that everything wasn't on a single network, and then trying to have some level of insulation for the security systems and some of those other kinds of systems that, frankly, students that were just getting online, in their classroom or on the wireless, I mean, they certainly didn't need to be having, potential IP access to the same kinds of networks. So not a typical article to start out with today, but we've been certainly hearing, unfortunately, a lot about this even through the July 4th weekend. And so this is impacting schools. So do you think any Montana schools, Jason, are spending any money on any security systems or any heightened security systems these days?
Almost certainly they are, and in fact, there's a lot of signs, or do you borrow a Dr. Fryer term, a sign of the time, in regards to a lot of things that were discussed in the days after the mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Single points of entry, security doors, security cameras. Forcing people to check in with a member of the office staff before they're even allowed in the physical plant, all part of that process. Obviously, the larger topic is an incredible rabbit hole. But what I would say is that if you are a tech director and put into the position to work on these technologies, just remember that you want to make sure that it's a community conversation, a community discussion, because every element of additional surveillance technology you add to a school does sacrifice some civil liberties in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not commenting on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, other than to say it's really important those are community conversations and that everyone with a stake in the conversation is involved in that. And most certainly, if you are a tech director, that you should be doing this at the command of an administrative staff. Make sure that all these things are done with the utmost safety and security, not only of physical persons, but of rights and responsibilities in mind.
Absolutely. I dropped a link into the chat. Peggy had a good comment. This sounds like a little invasive to scan all student communication. One of the really important conversations that I always had as tech director in September at the start of the year was having students sign what used to be called our acceptable use agreement. We migrated to a responsible use agreement with more affirmatives than just like a list of 20 I will nots. But putting students on notice to let them know about that. One of the interesting things that's happened with surveillance is it's become much more pervasive. And at one point, when there were fewer cameras, there were little signs, warning this area under video surveillance. As it was now, I mean, every single one of our buildings and many hallways, just lots and lots of places under surveillance, and there really weren't any signs letting people know about that. It was a bit sad because being the person who bore that news to the students actually created some, if not fear, intimidation, and definitely a perception of Big Brother. And I don't know. My personal view on that is I think that all of us, and this is whether you're part of a school organization or any kind of organization or not, all of us need to be aware that, and we'll probably talk about this with some other security articles talking about hacks, anything that is put into an electronic system can potentially be accessed by someone else who may or may not be authorized to access it. It can be hacked, but it certainly can be surveilled during the pandemic. And I think we talked about some of these articles, during the pandemic and in the past. The tools available to both Microsoft 365 domain users, to Google domain administrators, to be aware of the things that users were doing or not doing. Who hasn't logged into this tool? When was the last time this person used this? How many things are shared outside of our network or our domain? I don't know. There's a whole host of different tools. And now with Google, we've talked about this. You pay for some of those advanced admin console tools to be able to do some monitoring and things like that. But we have had very good success with Gaggle. It has been very helpful. It definitely allows for conversations to happen, especially around student wellness and potential self-harm and things like that. But it's something that requires a lot of administrative involvement. I could talk about that for a long time because I learned a great deal implementing that for the first time at our school. And like I said, being the person who was the face of IT and letting students know about what that meant and, trying to help them. I won't share some funny stories, but there are some funny stories that we have even about graduates and email accounts that didn't get activated and things that kids did and things that we became aware of. And, it's also part of the reason why you only want to be, having accounts active for current employees, for current students. You want those policies and protocols set in place and then followed in terms of the deactivation of accounts and things like that. Because there are some obligations and legalities that are certainly involved in that kind of monitoring. Something else that I'd say is that the Google Admin Console, one of the things you definitely don't want to do is just grant too many rights to folks when it comes to administrative systems. When I came to our school in 2015, there were a number of people that had been granted more administrative rights than they needed to be granted, on the system. And that can be something where people lock things down too much. But basically, if people need to reset passwords, that's what they should be able to do. You don't want to give them, more extensive access roles. And I think it's also really important that you always document your use of things. We had a tool, trying to think of the name of it, but it basically, we retained email for 5 years for everybody. And the tool would allow you to go in and do all kinds of queries. Well, I only, did that when I was being asked by an administrator to do that and documented that. There was only one case of a lawsuit where a judge had actually asked for really specific things. But I used that story without naming names to tell people, even though I knew about the fact that this was retained, when I had to respond to a court order and say every single email that was ever sent by this person that mentioned this or this, and there are ways of packaging that up and then being able to send that to a judge and send that to lawyers, actually, who then provide that to the judge. It's pretty eye-opening. So yes, it does sound invasive, but the fact is, all of the content and the things that we share online can be accessed by different people, and we need to be therefore aware of that when we choose to share things, and that could, possibly influence our behavior. And those are things that need to be well communicated by the organizations that are doing them. And I think this overall article from the New York Times is just kind of a warning, as we might share in other contexts too, to not just, move quickly to the latest flashy and, exciting thing, because technology is going to save us. Technology can certainly provide important windows into behavior, and it can help with conversations, but ultimately, it's not going to be a, quotes, silver bullet, which is a poor metaphor to use in this case. It's not going to solve all the problems, and in some cases, it could actually be a pretty big waste of resources that are very, limited and needed in schools. So those are both cautionary tales, I think, about how large sums of money are spent in the name of security and keeping kids safe.
Totally. And I would just add one other thought about this. Chances are that there are organizations in your state, whether it's a school board association that has attorneys, administrative advocacy groups that have attorneys. You should be implementing none of this without appropriate legal advice. So that you are doing it appropriately, not just for state laws and local ordinances, but for federal law as well. So
yes, and in addition to ISTE, COSN, the Consortium of School Networking, is excellent for IT directors. And at the time I stepped down 3 years ago as our tech director, they were really trying to ramp up a local state affiliate that they were doing, but just really, really great national as well as state and regional issues. I'm sure NCCE does a great deal of work with tech directors as far as networking and things like that. And where sometimes we talk about a lot of geeky, Google, Apple, and Microsoft stuff. But in terms of, the networking, the security systems, all of that, hey, the good old listserv is still alive and well. And there's just a lot of really, really good resources to be able to turn to for these kinds of things, because there's a lot of moving parts to them. And, depends on your context. If you're a little bit smaller, you can end up being saddled with a heck of a lot, and maybe things that you haven't ever received, formal training in, but they're things that you just have to figure out. So those kinds of organizations and relationships are priceless in terms of trying to figure out what it is that's worth spending money on and what to avoid and what's good.
Okay, great. Thanks. So let's see here. We could
Shift gears. Let's get back to a more normal topic.
Yeah. Here. Let's do some nerdy stuff. Let's do some Google News. First and foremost, we've been talking about this a couple of times in the last year or so, but 9 to 5 Google reported on July 4th that Hangouts on Android and iOS stops working as Google makes the transition to the chat app, and also the Hangouts protocols inside of the Gmail app. And chat is now going to relocate there. The two apps that you can move to are either Gmail, which has a component of Meets and video conferencing directly built into the app, or you can download the specific chat app if you want to. If you are in a Google domain, you've been emailed and warned about this really like a dozen times over the last 18 months or so. So that transition is finally complete. No word on whether or not Google will be sticking with the strategy. Part of the problem Google has had for a long time is that their chat strategy and their messaging strategy seems to be constantly evolving and never seems to resolve itself into something that looks like it's going to have any permanence. But if you're an IT person or deep into Google, that's something to keep in mind. A couple other.
I would add to that. Hopefully, at your school, you have a graduated system of granting rights on the network. I know early on in the life of networks and filtering and things like that, it was really just a one size fits all. So the kindergartners may be filtered just like the 12th graders and even just like the teachers. And I've been an advocate for differentiated filtering, where you provide teachers and staff a different set of filters than you do for students. Well, at our school, that changed if you were in elementary versus in middle school versus in high school. We created Google accounts when kids, entered the school, wherever that was, whether they were coming in at pre-K. Actually, they may have created them. Well, because of the pandemic, everybody kind of needed to have accounts. So I think that's when they started. But the email was not turned on until 5th grade, which for us was middle school. Well, this specific thing with Google and their tools, a decision was made at one point to turn off the Hangouts, and because there was a lot of text messaging and things like that was happening during class and during school. Well, I think there's some real benefits to Google's integration with Gmail, but at the same time, these may be new things that you'll need to talk with your students about, and I'm not sure the granular ability that Google's going to provide on a subdomain level to say, hey, yes, we want our 5th graders, for instance, to have email, but no, we don't want them to be able to chat. And the tighter these things are integrated, sometimes it can become impossible to separate that out. So I would just put a little flag on that to say that'll be something to check into. If you've happened to look into that already, reach out to Jason or I and let us know. Send us an article or a link, or just tell us what your experience has been, because I'm sure that is something that some schools are going to wrestle with. And I think, as we talked about on the show a few weeks ago, glad to see Google continuing to try to move that forward with messaging. It really is an important application, and it's something that it affects a whole lot. But from an educational standpoint, student engagement, distraction, these are questions and issues that IT departments and hopefully the academic side of the house and teachers get to have conversations about and decide what to do. That could be something that is needed to be discussed, because it certainly could be a new capability that your kids didn't have last year that maybe they have this year, because now this is integrated, inside Gmail.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Next, this is an article that announces that the availability in new systems, but I hadn't realized until very recently that this was now available. But 9 to 5 Google reported on June 30th that they're adding the e-signature system that is now inherently built into Google Docs to Workspace Individual, which is actually what I use for my small business projects on the side of my day job and the other little projects I have, like this podcast. But I only recently figured out that this is available, and it's really quite a slick system. There's a pretty good chance, if you're in a school district, that in the last 2 to 3 years, you've adopted some kind of electronic signature system. Adobe Sign, DocuSign, which became very popular during the pandemic. As an example of this, my wife and I took out a new mortgage in the now gone days of low interest rates in order to get kind of a screaming good interest rate on a shorter mortgage on our home. And we use DocuSign for most of the initial documents for that part of that process. And if you haven't done it, it's really a slick system. The Adobe Sign, DocuSign, and the other alternatives. that's also built directly into Google Workspace now. So after you get a document that's ready to be signed, you can actually request a signature, and that's a feature that's built directly into Google Docs now. And I have to say that, and I've commented this on 4 or 5 times, 95%, 96% of all the word processing I do is in Google Docs now, because it's just such a great system. And as a reminder, that I'm not a Johnny come lately to this. I wrote my dissertation in Google Docs, actually against the advice of some people that said that it was not a robust enough platform to be able to write an academic paper like that. Not only did I pull it off, I felt like the Google Docs really added a lot to the workflow process for me as I worked with my committee to complete the dissertation process. But if you haven't looked into that yet as a process, especially if you have kind of low value paperwork, so many signatures in K-12 schools that could be very eloquently created in an e-signature system. I'm just thinking about things like permission slips for field trips and that sort of thing, where you might be able to save an extraordinary amount of time and heartache by moving towards just some kind of electronic signature system. So check that out in your individual Google Workspace system for your school.
Absolutely. We're right now, our daughter, youngest, has graduated, and so she's going to it's actually a prep school for a year in Virginia. And, there's a ton of forms and a ton of things, and they've employed some different systems to be able to do that. We're also in the process, we're selling our house, we're looking for a house, we're leasing, we're doing all these different things at a distance. And these electronic systems are fantastic. Hopefully Google's going to have a similar pretty seamless experience. But I think this is a great thing to be integrated in, and it will, sign of the times, right? Digital signatures. These are things that increasingly we expect. Leasing a new townhouse, across the country. I don't expect that I need to print out a piece of paper, and fax it. I expect that I can electronically take care of that, and I have. So it's great that these tools are being provided within the Google Workspace environment, and I'll be excited to hear what people's experiences are as they roll out and are being utilized.
Absolutely. And then one last one that I thought I would mention is that um, uh, uh, Chrome OS 105, which is the next version that's currently in beta on Chromebooks, it's in the so-called dev channel right now, which means that you can put your Chromebook in a dev channel and get future features earlier, although in an unstable way. But there is a new feature that's being tested out. This is according to Kevin Toffel. Can we call him our friend Kevin Toffel?
Sure.
Maybe we're fanboys of Kevin Toffel. Kevin
He's
Toffel
retweeted me before, so yeah, we're buds.
There you go. So yeah, a fan of the podcast, obviously. But Mr. Toffel reports at About Chromebooks on July 5th that there is a feature that could allow you to tweak things in order to save on battery life. And the feature is called Quick Intensive Timer Throttling of Loaded Background Pages. And essentially what it does is that it stops some of the background information that happens on your Chromebook to fetch pages and also fetch scripts and things that can help load your page. And the idea here is that it could increase your battery life by not 10% is a number being tossed around. It's probably not going to be 10%, but it's another tweak that Chrome is working on to extend the battery of your Chrome devices. And already your Chrome OS device is likely to be much more battery efficient than other operating systems available because of its kind of svelte posture and its minimalistic design philosophy. But I just love that all these individual tweaks continue to happen in the background in Chrome OS. And I have to say, I may be more or less a Mac guy again, but I still love using a Chromebook. And in fact, when I have a choice between different platforms, I still love choosing Chrome OS as a power user's platform, in part because of tweaks like this.
Did we talk last week about TikTok and about the security stuff? Do we?
I can't remember, except that I did put an article in about when I can't remember where it's from
Yeah,
now. It's
sure.
from
Yeah,
95.
security. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, maybe let me do this senators one because I think I don't know. I don't know if I don't remember if we talked about this or not, but we'll talk about this and then you can hit that other TikTok article. So this is PC Magazine today on July 6th. Oh, okay. Senators urge FTC to investigate TikTok over Chinese access to user data. That's weird. I think this was an older article. They must have updated it. Why it says July 6th, or maybe not. I'm losing my mind. There's only a few things that are going on in my life right now. Well, maybe this is that we had talked about the leaked audio recordings. I think that was it. This was something that was originally posted by The Guardian. So yeah, I think we got another article about this. And so this was one that Senators Marco Rubio from Florida and Mark Warner from Virginia came out in a statement and said, quote, these revelations, talking about the leaked like 80 audio recordings that show that employees in China have access to TikTok user data. They said these revelations undermine longstanding claims by TikTok's management that the company's operations were firewalled from the demands of the Communist Party. And the interesting thing about this is, while it does seem to undoubtedly be, it definitely seems to be true based on the release of the materials that user data has been sent to China. We really don't have any privacy protection laws in the United States for this now. We don't have a GDPR like Europe has, or really anything else that protects our privacy. So, senators and representatives and other people can flap around and have articles written about them, and they could try to pass some resolutions, but in terms of really rubber meets the road kinds of legislation, I think we did talk about it last week, but it was in reference to another article, because that one we talked about last week was some people within the administration, the executive branch of the United States, were saying that there is some forthcoming legislation that involves where the data lives. In fact, one of the things was like called the Texas Bill or something, or the Texas Project, because some of this is about where does the data live? Is it in the United States? But I think the larger issue here is privacy. And let's just think about that. Where in our school curriculum, where in our courses are we really focusing in on privacy and what it means to not have a protected right to privacy with data, and where does that all go? We had a combined American literature and U.S. history class in our high school this last year for the first time. One of the topics that they took on, and I think they dropped it for this next year, but it was big tech. And I thought that was wonderful, a great opportunity to have a deep dive into all of these kinds of issues. But anyway, TikTok in the news, and there's issues here, but are we going to see anything substantively change? I don't see any signs of that. So you want to do your TikTok App Store article?
Yeah, so related to that, there are a lot of accusations flying around about TikTok right now, and there has been the FCC commissioner that recommended to both Google Play Store and Apple that they pull it from their marketplace because they felt that there was enough concerns to do that. And we've talked about these kind of broad concerns before, and I'm trying to, my memory's trying to figure out how in depth we went into this last week, but the bottom line is there is a lot of concerns here. Part of my thought here that is always a part of what I can't wrap my brain around is that they're never all that specific, right? Like exactly what is the threat, right? Like obviously concerns of access of people accessing that in China, but I would imagine that there are a lot of apps actually that people in China, because of the global economy, have access to data that would be considered private or sensitive. But the article that I'm pointing to is kind of a response to that. It's from 9 to 5 Mac on July 1st, and TikTok has commented that they will do basically whatever it takes to make sure that the app itself stays in those two primary distribution channels, the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store for iOS and iPad OS. And I can understand what kind of sensitive data could be stored. I can understand how people's habits, what they click on, what they follow, what they comment on, especially if they're trying to remain anonymous, could be very concerning. We on this podcast have talked about TikTok a lot from the standpoint of its discovery engine that seems incredibly accurate. And, there are lots of what are seemingly innocent parts of TikTok that, you may be saying to yourself, who cares if people learn, know which dance videos I click a like to, or if you're a super fan of Dr. Fryer's barbecue TikTok page, that's not that sensitive of information. But I don't think the imagination needs to run that wild to think about ways that your private viewing habits could be considered at least embarrassing to you, if not highly concerning.
I have been shocked in the past couple of weeks how hard different bad actors have tried to get my phone number through Facebook Marketplace. One of the things that does happen to me on TikTok, they want access to my contacts. And I say no, and will that make it easier? Now, whatever, disclose. I'm using Signal because that's something where next week is the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy. And, that's the platform that we use for a group chat among the 26 or so of us that are organizers and help this thing, help this rocket launch and the whole conference happen. I said yes to contacts and I've been able to some people have made connections with me because of that. But I think that's actually a decision that is one of those things that we don't necessarily prepare people really well to think about. Do I want to do this? It was like I think I told that story about Clubhouse, right? And I don't have Clubhouse on my phone now. I dabbled with it a little bit and I deleted it. But when I first installed Clubhouse, click, and I don't know if I had a choice, but it was just so fast and boom, I just granted them access to every single one of my contacts. That's every phone number, that's every email address. And what's been happening lately with Facebook Marketplace is we're selling stuff, right? And it's awesome. I think it's actually better than a garage sale. We're not going to get that much. And we're making a little bit of money, selling furniture that we're not going to be taking to North Carolina. Well, and I've read things on Reddit and other places about how people want to get your phone number. And so you can send them messages through Facebook Messenger. We may have done an article on the show saying that, anyway, some security professional said, iOS users, delete Facebook Messenger. It is not a safe app. And maybe this is part of the reason, because rather than message within Facebook Messenger, here, send me your phone number. Well, no, I'm not sending you your phone number. And the thing that just happened this last week, because I have taken payments with PayPal and Venmo, is somebody wanted to use Zelly. Well, I've used Zelly with a relative before, but Zelly works with your phone number. And I was like, no, I'm not giving you my phone number. And usually after I do that, these users, whoever they are, just discontinue and they cut off. But anyway, I need to write a blog post about this. And I don't know, sometimes we get these drums that we're going to beat. We talk password managers and these other things. But for me right now, for internet safety, is like, do you realize how critical it is to keep your personal cell phone number a secret and not just give it out? And if you're on something like Facebook Marketplace, you are interacting with the public, and that is a potentially perilous thing. So anyway, I think that just needs to be part of overall conversations that we're having with folks about security and safety. And it goes into TikTok or any other app, because what do they continue to ask you? Or, it does me, can I have access to your contacts? Will you please let me have access? And especially like I had to delete and then reinstall until you get those questions again.
Yep, totally. And hey, quick tip. I don't give my cell phone number out, my cell phone number out, even though I give my cell phone number out to a lot of people all the time to stay connected. And I do that with a Google Voice number.
And that's what I do too. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
All right.
Well, let's see here.
Can you want to do that cryptocurrency crash?
That was you.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So
I'll comment on it because my cryptocurrency is, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah, right. Well, okay. This is the New York Times on June 29th. And this is a gift link if I can figure out how to copy it appropriately here. Crypto crash widens the divide. Those with money will end up being fine. I will admit that cryptocurrency is one of those things that, we've talked about on the show. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, one of these technologies that okay, what does that really mean? Is this a real thing? It's based on blockchain, but it was only a few weeks ago, this video that I had shared that really was a pretty strong expose. And then I think we talked about a Bill Gates article or video that he put out. I mean, I am fully convinced now that crypto is a scam, and it is just some smart people that have used the technology, which is interesting, to create a currency, which, what is currency? It's something that people put faith in, something that people perceive has value. And because enough people perceive it has value, it does. Back in the day, pre-Nixon, the US dollar used to be backed by real gold. They did away with that. It's just really the perception that we have that, what is the full faith and confidence in the US government, it's going to have value. So anyway, this article from the New York Times talking about cryptocurrency is saying that there's, this big divide, and well, this is funny. So Jason, did you see The Social Network, the movie that was about the founding of Facebook? Mark Zuckerberg?
Several times, yeah.
All right. Excellent movie. If you guys haven't seen that, check that out on Netflix or whatever. So the headline of this features billionaire twins who now have a band called Mars Junction, the Winklevosses. They're featured in that movie. Well, perhaps not surprising to everybody, they've been really big advocates for cryptocurrency. And Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss, they're also, doing this tour, raising funds, for themselves as band members. But cryptocurrency is one of these things that's just continuing. People are continuing to say, come on, you got to do it. Literally driving up here to Kansas, stopping at the turnpike at the gas station, the ATM allows you to buy Bitcoin. In fact, I haven't posted this, but these screenshots, buy your Bitcoin, get it right here, trade your regular money. And so this article is basically saying the Winklevosses and, Elon Musk and these really high-flying folks that are huge into these cryptocurrencies, they're not going to lose their entire shirt. I mean, they've got, millions in many cases of dollars wrapped up in this. And so, yeah, there have been 30%, 50% falls in this crypto crash. But they're going to be okay. And so that's basically what this article says. The combined fortunes of the 16 richest crypto billionaires exceeded $135 billion in March, Forbes estimated. As of this week, the total was down to about $76 billion. Most of the loss was suffered by a single billionaire, Changpeng Zhao, chief executive of Binance, whose $65 billion fortune shrank to 17.4 billion. I don't know, man. It's definitely has drawn a lot of folks in. So anyway, your comments, Dr. Neiffer, as a crypto investor, as a proud Dogecoin owner.
Yes, and to be clear, I'm still very much up on Dogecoin because I bought it at such a painfully low price. But I mean, the article makes a really good point about, I haven't lost anything in my crypto investments. And in fact, because I invested a very small amount of money in this, mostly as a joke, even if I lose it all, it's not, it's really not going to be a big deal. But that's part of the point, right? Like that's the, I am not a Winklevi, so I really can't comment to their ultimate worth, but I would imagine what they invested into it was kind of what I invested into it, which, for me was relatively small amount of money. I did at one point have a unrealized value that was extraordinary based on my relatively small investment. And now it's just, a good return as opposed to a unbelievably shocking return. But I see these poor folks on the message boards on like Reddit and such that have invested really all of their liquid capital in cryptocurrency. Some of them early on did make extraordinary amounts of returns, and some of them did really amazing things with it, which was to put a down payment down on a house or donate a bunch of money to good causes or help out their mom or do all sorts of great things. But the vast majority of people that invested a lot of money in those cryptocurrencies are seeing losses at this point, and sometimes substantial losses. And some of the lesser known currencies kind of end up just becoming worth nothing, and the value disappears with it. And so I've heard, I've heard cryptocurrency called, very mockingly, multi-level marketing for bros, which I thought was a pretty funny reference, to multi-level marketing schemes. It's probably not that unfair of an analogy, but the bottom line is that I still think there is very much a future to cryptocurrencies. I think there's something here. I think the blockchain itself, I think, has extraordinary applications that we're just beginning to scratch. And I think many of those could actually have some impact ultimately on education and how we do record keeping and how we show a proof of what we've done and what we've accomplished, portfolios we've completed. But the bottom line is that if you're treating it like a get rich quick scheme, chances are it's going to be at the very least unpleasant results, if not a total loss. And so it continues to be very careful.
So one more quote from the article, and then I'm going to do a shout out to our June episode. And we talked about this video. This is from the article. And this is also good from a historical standpoint. Crypto and NFTs are an example of something that really should be in your economics curriculum. And if you don't have an economics class, like, where do you talk about economics in high school? Like, there should be a place where that is discussed. Because, we don't do enough with financial literacy with students in general, but the world of crypto it's part of the landscape. So the article says the crypto crash started in May of 2022 when an experimental coin called Terra USD lost almost all its value practically overnight, taking down a sister digital currency, Luna, as well. Its collapse devastated some retail traders who had spent their life savings on Terra USD through Anchor Protocol, a lending program that let investors deposit the coin and receive interest as high as 19.5%. And it goes into talking about the sort of like the dominoes that fell there. But let me do a shout out to our previous episode 260 from June the 1st. And in that episode, I shared as my Geek of the Week a video that I really, really recommend called Line Goes Up, The Problem with NFTs. And it's by a guy named Dan Olson. And I also gave the link to an Ezra Klein podcast interview with Dan that he did. So anyway, it's well worth checking out. And it's, the blockchain, that kind of technology, encryption, these are powerful technologies, which we are definitely hearing people tout the world-changing potential of them. They are having an impact on people's lives, and it is pretty interesting to think about, monetary systems that are outside the central control of any kind of bank or government or things like that. So anyway, that's a bit of a rabbit hole in and of itself. And I think, Dr. Neiffer, holy cow, are you serious? You got like 5 minutes. We started a little late, so we can go a few more minutes. What else do you want to talk about tonight besides crypto?
Well, let's do some Apple articles. And part of this is that I imagine we both might have some stories to tell in regards to this. 9 to 5 Mac reported yesterday a story from Hannah Rose May of the Netflix series Altered Carbon. Recently shared a story where an Apple AirTag somehow made it on her person. There's a lack of details about the specifics here, but she noticed it when an app pushed on here. I believe she was at Disney World at some kind of event, and somehow this tag made it onto her person or in her stuff. That part is a little unclear. And then Apple, the iPhone notified her, and she was able to get rid of it before she left the property, so it didn't follow her anywhere. And I think that, in my mind, that's a success from the standpoint of, Apple let her know that there was a rogue tag that was following her, but Apple's still trying to figure out, the security lines here. And we've talked about this issue probably a half dozen times since AirTags have been released widely to consumers. And I think there is some scary things here. But, the other thing that I think is also important to remember is that there are a lot of fairly terrifying technologies that are available for next to nothing through mainstream consumer sites like Amazon that in a not discoverable way can track people's locations. And so it's just something to be ultra aware about. So go ahead, Dr. Fryer.
I'll try to share it fast, but I have an AirTag story. So thanks to Dr. Neiffer, I have had put an AirTag in my luggage. I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania last week at a robotics workshop for Carnegie Mellon, or with Carnegie Mellon, and it was just great. But holy cow, air travel can be crazy, and it was coming back. And I was on a flight to go into LaGuardia in New York, but the airport was shut down and we all had to leave. And basically the bottom line was I thanks to American, was able to jump on a flight to Dallas, get another flight, came home early, made it home, no problem. My bag is in New York. So thanks to the AirTag, I could see exactly what gate it was at LaGuardia. I was able to check in with it. Oh, look, it's made it to Dallas. Oh, look, it made it to Oklahoma City. Oh, look, it's out for delivery, and it was east of I-35 and then it was over here. But, I didn't have that notification from American, but I knew exactly where my bag was. That is very cool. So, and then when I was, even when I went in to file for it, I just went in right after I landed in Oklahoma City and said, hey, my bag is in New York. I know that because I have an AirTag. She's like, really? You're the second person who's come in and said that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So There's bad stuff, but there's also good stuff.
Well, and as a matter of fact, Dr. Fryer, the other article I have to share today is from CNET, 5 places to put an Apple AirTag that you've never thought about. Of course, one of them is your checked bag. And of course, you have thought about this because you listen to the EdTech Situation Room podcast. We've talked about this in the past, but I will tell you that I am in love with the AirTag technology. I now have 7 of them. I've given them away as gifts to half dozen people or so, and it's exactly the stuff that you're talking about. There's one in my check bag. There's one in my daily carry bag. There's one in my insulin kit. I'm a diabetic. There's one in my insulin kit. There's one in well, they suggest putting it in your jacket, so you remember to, if you leave your jacket behind, it will notify you that you've left.
Yeah, because it notifies you if you turn that on when you are separated from it. So
these are my AirPods. I bought a case that has an AirTag a holder on there. I also have one on my keys that I also.
You're going to see him as Jason the Knife AirTag.
Yes, yeah. Air Knife, I think, is what the preferred title that the committee has come up. The idea here is that I think that it's an extremely useful technology, and I also have one sitting on my remote at home too, because if you have a modern iPhone, I shouldn't say modern, if you have a recent release iPhone, you can actually have it guide you directly to the item. And so if you are an Apple TV user, as I am, and I believe Dr. Fryer is as well, the remote is pretty thin, and actually it likes to slip into couch cushion cracks in ways that is pretty unique in comparison to other remotes. And so I have a holder that also has an AirTag, so I can find that piece. So
Exhibit A, I've just removed this from Moose, who is journeying with me. This is Moose's collar, and so we just have a little I don't know, vinyl, neoprene, whatever. It's just some kind of synthetic plastic, but it's in there. He's actually gone swimming multiple times with this, and it's not supposed to be waterproof, but these are doing really well after multiple dunks in the pool. I put one of mine on my Kindle, which I somehow seem to always replace or always misplace in the home. So I'm just going to say kudos to Apple for responding to the criticism, for allowing folks now to be able to be alerted when there is an AirTag repeatedly in their proximity that's not their own. And so anyway, it's a very powerful technology. And as we've said repeatedly in different contexts, any powerful technology and tool is going to be able to be used in very, very good and very bad ways. That's just the nature of a really potent new technology and development like that.
Yep, totally. I couldn't agree more. So that technology continues to be pretty great. And then the last article I'll share today is related to Apple, is another 9 to 5 Mac article, but the European Union Parliament has passed something referred to as the Digital Markets Act, and basically it essentially compels companies to add in or allow alternative app stores onto devices. And the antitrust legislation this is quoting from the article, will also oblige Apple to allow developers to use third-party payment platforms when apps are sold through Apple's own app store, and could require require it and make iMessage talk to competing messenger apps. And there is a lot of debate about this, about exactly technically what it will require, but certainly third-party payment platforms is going to be a part of this. It could allow competing app stores and or sideloading of apps. I will say that it isn't necessarily a done deal. They would have to allow alternative app stores, because it depends on how you define the narrow parameters of the law, and then of course iMessage interoperability, so that other messaging systems like RCS might be able to talk to iMessage. I would say we've talked about this issue a couple of times before, maybe even a dozen or so times before. I still think that there is some logic to keeping a single vetted app store available on an application. You may force a company like Apple to allow alternative payment systems. I think that's a slightly different story, but there's something to be said about a vetted app store platform. And while you hear all the time that bad apps made onto the Android platform, either through the Google Play Store itself or an alternative app store, of which there are dozens of them available, not the least of which is Amazon's alternative app store for Android. You don't hear about that very often on the Apple side. And Apple's made this argument several times that a walled garden and a security-minded approach do make it a safer experience for the end user.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately that we're going to be faced with choices with this. I guess I can go ahead and say this. I think I've said it out loud before. We're being transcribed by Facebook right now. Once upon a time, Wes jailbroke his iPhone. And in part, that was because I wanted to be able to mirror my phone and do demonstrations, and you didn't have a way to do AirPlay mirroring. You had to jailbreak your phone and have an app that was available on Cydia, which was the alternative app store, and you open yourself up. You had to be very careful. I didn't install stuff I didn't research and know about. I think this is the trajectory where we're headed, and that is just going to be a user beware sort of environment where the app environment on the iPhone may not be nearly as gate kept and protected, and people are going to need to be careful. But guess what? Not everybody's going to be, and there's probably kids and others out there that are going to do things, and maybe that'll be something Apple will allow for as a parental restriction, right? Maybe you'll be able to say, okay, kids, only apps installed from the App Store. I don't know, but it does seem like the trajectory of this in terms of litigation is to push Apple and the other app stores, Google, but other players that are there to open it up. So I think it's going to mean, my dad's like, it's time. Our studio audience is responding right now, Jason. So I think that the trajectory of this is going to be that probably Apple is going to have to open that up, and that's going to make things more dangerous for consumers and for everybody. And bad actors rejoice, because you're going to have more chances to get on people's devices. We can't end on that sad note, but we'll say a couple other things before we sign off.
Okay. Well, Wes, it sounds like we're about time to wrap it up.
I think so. Yeah. So I put 2 Geeks of the Weekend today. First one is kind of fun. It's Image Candy. I think it was you, Dr. Neiffer, that alerted me to PDF Candy. And because of sharing that and tweeting that, the developers of Image Candy, which is a website that offers web-based image conversion and manipulation. So converting images, resizing them, compressing them, removing the background, converting them to PDF, rotating them, flipping them, cropping them, adding text, watermarking, making a meme, the all-important HEIC to JPEG, and then making a GIF from a video. All of that is available. So super, super cool, all web-based. Chromebook users rejoice. And then the last thing, I have a physical security key that allows me to log into USB-C devices as well as Lightning devices, iOS devices, which is great. I love it. It is on my keychain, which I actually have in my pocket, along with my handy-dandy AirTag. And it's great. Okay, so I can use this as a physical device. It's a YubiKey with 2 sides. Guess what's not there? USB-A. I'm using my ancient Chromebook. So how am I going to get this to work? Well, you can have alternative means of authenticating yourself, but there's also an adapter. So that's what I also dropped in, is just from Amazon, a $9 USB-C to A adapter, which apparently will work with security keys and other things. And so if you've got, for instance, well, anyway, that's the scenario that I'm using that for, but didn't know that existed. There's my geek of the week. How about you, Dr. Neiffer?
Well, I'm traveling again. Not only in-state travel, but a little bit of out-of-state travel. And in fact, I'm going to be booking a couple more trips for later this fall. I'm trying really hard to stay super safe with COVID, but N95 masks have been my friend. But I mentioned that earlier this year, I picked up an iPad Air 5. This is my iPad Air 5. It's the newest iPad Air. I wish it was available in that sage green color, but the blue color is still absolutely beautiful. I love this. It's got the M1 chip in it. It's fast. It's efficient. The battery life isn't super great, but what I've also figured out is that if you keep the 5G on and the screen on super bright, it really burns the battery down. You turn the screen down, you turn 5G, or I'm sorry, you turn mobile internet off, the battery life gets a lot better. But on a lark, a couple weeks back, I wanted a keyboard case for this, and Apple's keyboard case is $300 for this, the Magic case. But I did find a used version of it on eBay for just under half the price. And to be honest, it came in good enough condition that it probably looks like what it would have looked like if I had taken it on a trip anyways. But I picked it up. This is it right here, and I am absolutely in love with it. It is a totally amazing experience because not only does it have a nice Apple keyboard, but a beautiful trackpad, and it literally is a magnet that holds this into it. And all you do is snap the iPad into place, and then it becomes effectively a mobile laptop. Now, let me be clear. We've talked about in the past, I don't think this is a laptop replacement, right? Like here I am sitting in a hotel room tonight, and I'm on my MacBook Pro, and I prefer that for typing. But at a conference I was at a couple weeks ago in Denver, this was the best portable machine ever. It came in and out of my bag super easily. It's lightweight. The battery lasts all day. It has a mobile connection on it, so through my through the card I slipped into there, it's easy access without having to mess with conference Wi-Fi. It is a really, really amazing experience. And while 2 or 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined taking only an iPad on a work trip, I think I could pull it off now. Again, it's an expensive item. $300 is the retail price from Apple, but if you spend some time looking for a used one, they are anywhere from a third to a half off. And if you find a trusty seller, especially one that will take a return from you if it doesn't work out the way you hoped it would, or if it's a little too banged up, I highly recommend the Magic Keyboard for iPad. It's the iPad Pro and the iPad Air 4 and 5.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Neiffer, when you're not here on Wednesday nights, which, by the way, will only be a couple more weeks at this 9 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, we're going to be rolling earlier by 1 hour starting in August. Where can people find you?
Well, best place to find me is Twitter. Tech Savvy Teach is my username there. How about you, sir?
I am W. Fryer on Twitter, and you can also find a variety of links to connect with me at wesfryer.com/after. But this has been the EdTech Situation Room. We are appreciative of you joining us. We had our live studio audience here, as well as Peggy. My wife, I don't know if you noticed that Jason even made an appearance in our chat room, complimenting me on my Randolph-Macon t-shirt. So I think that is a first as well. But we are normally here on Wednesday nights, and you can check out all the links to our show at edtechsr.com/links. When I finally get around to doing the compression and publishing, usually that's on a weekly basis, you can access small MP3 versions and smaller compressed audio versions of our show on edtechsr.com. But thankfully, YouTube and Facebook do not delay in archiving our shows, so you can check out any of those on YouTube as well as Facebook, and we encourage you to follow us there as well as on Twitter. Let us know if you've got any feedback from the show. We do love to hear when folks are listening, and if you can join us live, we would love for you to do that. So until next time, we encourage everybody to stay savvy, stay safe, and take care. Keep enjoying the summer. If it's summertime.
Yeah. Good night.